Hello everybody and welcome back to another Off Meta Talk, where I take your questions about Warcry, Games Workshop, or the hobby in general, and I go a cappella to try and answer them every month. As always, if you have any questions for me about anything at all, put them down in the comment section below, and I will be sure to get around to them for a future episode. But for now, let's get into it. Right, so question one. Spectre WSA asks, what team do you show new players who have never played? I always use Quest of Soulsworn. For me, the team that I like to show is Iron Golems. And the reason for that is that I think it's got a wide enough array of profiles that it gives a very good introduction to the game. You've got a big old meaty fighter in the case of the Ogre Breacher. You've got a bunch of durable high damage fighters. You've got a little bit of range in there. You've got some nice abilities going on. They aren't super difficult to pilot. They've got a lot of damaging stuff going on. Not an amazing amount of weird little tricky play. But I think for your first game of Warcry, if you are teaching someone, what you really want to do is to capture the flavor of a game. You don't want to get down into the nitty-gritty of, okay, this is specifically how we're going to jump over a fence, or you take falling damage, break your legs. What you're more interested in is telling a story. When that story is compelling and the person you are teaching how to play the game can kind of get behind the motivations, what people are there, why they are there, and the abilities that they use kind of make sense for the fighters that you're looking at. For me, that's how to get a more successful introduction and to get people to come back. So let's take the Ogre Breacher for an example. All right, we know what the Ogre Breacher does. He runs in, he smashes face. He does have the living battering ram triple, and you can see it when you tell the story. You can say, right, your Ogre Breacher, he's decided to smash right into the enemy lines. He uses his living battering ram rule, which does a whole bunch of damage when he goes in, and then he's going to start swinging with his meaty fists. Like, you can see it in your mind, you can see how it works, and I think that's how you get a more successful first game of Warcry, to get people to come back and dive into the rules a little bit more in depth, and to try and pick one of these warbands that they may like. Okay guys, we are almost there. Almost hit that goal for this year. 56% are still not subscribed to this channel, so come on, let's get in there, let's hit those goals for this year. If you do want to throw some more support my way, you can join me here on YouTube. You can join me here on Patreon. You can join me over on Streamlabs. Either way, you are going to get to see behind the scenes content. You're going to get to see stuff before it's released, and you are going to have a little bit of a say into the kind of content that I create in the future. But regardless, if you are a new viewer or you're a returner, thank you very much for watching. Now, let's get back to the video. Skirmish Studios 1 asks, considering you and Toast have brought two of the lower tier warbands to a higher tier, is it possible every warband has a chance to reach A or even S tier? No, is the answer. If you look at what we did, we basically picked, I guess we're talking about Tarantulas Brood and we're talking about Corvus Cabal. Both of these warbands had something pretty major happen to them in that they got very, very good battle traits. Corvus Cabal, in this case, they get +1 strength, or is it +2 strength? Something like that. They get a strength boost when they jump off of things, which directly synergizes with what they want to do. And Tarantulas Brood got a free resurrect, essentially once per game. Those two things are incredibly powerful for those warbands, and it happens to be that the way that these two warbands play go very well into the current meta that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of 6, 7, maybe 8-man warbands nowadays, but most likely you'll see 7-man. They'll be kind of elite. Maybe they'll have a couple of big guys to smash apart enemy elites, and it happens to be that what both Corvus Cabal and Tarantulas Brood do is play very well into those playstyles. When you have a Shrike Talon that's jumping off things, getting a whole bunch of free attacks, doing a whole bunch of damage, it makes it very easy and quick to blitz down one of those very large fighters. And then with Tarantulas Brood, if you're running with 7-man warbands and Tarantulas Brood running 15, you basically outmaneuver and out-activate your opponent before even half your warband has gone. That's kind of why they are doing what they're doing. In the case of Nighthaunt, again, they used to be really bad. They had a couple of updates that made them actually quite good. The April update for Nighthaunt, which gave them all Frightful Touch, is really what everything is riding on the back on, because their battle trait boosts that playstyle. In the case of those guys, they had some help, and the meta that we are running into at the moment just means that those warbands can shine. Now, doesn't mean that if at some point in the future another meta develops, you'll be able to see more of those low-tier warbands rise up. Yes, it totally does, but I can't say that every warband is going to reach A or S tier, simply because there are some warbands in the game that mechanically kind of just don't work. Like Pyregeists, they got a very good battle trait, but it really all depends on them generating Pyre tokens. And you have to massively skew your list in order to do that with any kind of regularity. And they kind of just don't have the damage internally that you would need to really take advantage of that battle trait. Khorne Demons as well, for example, they got a bunch of guys, but they have no hero abilities. They are kind of missing half of their roster. They don't have all that much stuff. Without taking them as the core of a warband and just throwing in like a Vexmore and a Varangard, they're going to have a lot of trouble reaching those higher tiers. When we're doing tier lists, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the best list that a faction can bring. But on the other hand, we can't just say, oh, it's a Chaos faction, therefore it can take the best allies in the game, therefore it's B tier or A tier. We can't do that because even in that limited scope, there will be other warbands whose cores are just way out better than anything else. So I think in conclusion, no, not every warband can reach A tier or S tier, but I think there is a meta for every warband playstyle, and that means that some warbands will naturally move up and naturally move downwards in the rankings as you play. Mr. Ice Cream asks, proxying, where would you draw the line? Models from a different faction? 40k models in Warcry? Base size? Right, so this is very, very simple for me. I mostly play at Warhammer World, and Warhammer World has rules around proxying the kind of models that you can and you can't bring. I would expect that all models that my opponent has are going to be on the right base size, because base size does matter in this game. It determines if you can move through things, how far you can move. It's really important for terrain, so I think base size is really important. The general profile of the model is also important. For example, I made the Rotworm. The idea was it was a proxy from Mindstealer Sphinx. I made sure it was the same height, roughly the same width, roughly the same shape, so that my opponents can't claim that I'm basically modeling for advantage. In Warcry, when you're doing line of sight, you can do it from any part of the model to any part of your opponent's model. If they got a big old sword sticking out, or a big old arm, or a big old tentacle, whatever, that does give you advantages. Yes, you can be seen in return, but if it's a model that wouldn't be able to do that normally, then I would say that that's not really wanted from what I'm looking for. I should be able to, by looking at the model, tell what it's armed with. So, for example, if a model profile is a spear, then I expect it to have a long spear type weapon. If it's going to be a sword, then I expect it to have a short sword style weapon. The reason for that is when you're playing a game, you don't want all of the additional mental load of going, okay, well, my opponent's models are actually armed with swords when you see the models, but they really have spears and they have a 2-inch range. Different weapon profiles have different ranges, and they kind of almost standardize that across all the models. If you got a weird flaily whippy thing, it's likely it's going to have 3-inch range. If you've got a spear, likely it's going to have 2. Sword, likely it's going to have 1. So I guess the idea is that the model that is on the table should roughly look like the model that it is representing. If we're going to go down the route of different factions, it has to kind of make sense. So let's say, for example, I wanted to do Lizardmen as Tarantulas Brood. Instead of the spiders, we had jungle swarms. That's absolutely fine. That's something that you have a discussion with your opponent before you play the game. And you can say, right, yeah, these aren't spiders, these are jungle swarms. They will look like jungle swarms, that's what they are. You've got a bunch of skinks who represent your guys, but those guys would be armed with nets and would be armed with tridents in my case. And the Doomweaver would be some kind of big mutant super skink. I think that's absolutely fine, but you have to make that 100% clear with your opponent when you begin. So yeah, long and the short of it, the correct base size, roughly the same profile, which means height, width, dimensions, whatever. You should be able to look at the model and say what kind of a weapon it has. If you want to proxy in other things, have that talk with your opponent. Anything outside of that, if someone tried to pass off a Dreadnought, for example, as normal 28mm infantry, that's not on. That's never come up in any of my games so far. Danby1523 asks, should Darkoath Savagers be part of Darkoath faction as a whole? I want to say no, because I think that Darkoath Savagers have a whole bunch more utility that if you just smash them into Darkoath could potentially break that faction. But I do get the reason why people want them to be part of Darkoath, because they got Darkoath in the name. That being said, there are some Bladeborn warbands that I think should be part of Darkoath. I'm thinking of the Null Spirit pack, and I think there's one more, which I think thematically fits in with them. I think they should definitely be part of Darkoath, but Darkoath Savagers, I kind of don't think so, especially considering that they are basically out of production now, I think, by Games Workshop. I know that they were in the recent Darkoath Battle Box, so maybe they are still going. But yeah, no, I like to keep them separate, and I'm absolutely fine with them being separate warbands. This is kind of the same question as should Hunters of Warcry be part of Seraphon, and my answer to that is no, because Hunters of Warcry have a specific playstyle. Seraphon have a specific playstyle in the same way that Darkoath Savagers have a specific playstyle and Darkoath has a specific playstyle. So I like to keep them separate. Gives us more options, gives us more choices in terms of our warbands, how to build them and what to bring. Old World Vulture 3260 asks, our sweet, precious baby Kindlefinger is now nearly 1.5 years old. What would I buy Kindlefinger for their second birthday? Kindlefinger, if you guys don't know, is from Ephelim's Pandemonium. Happy birthday, Kindlefinger. You did it. You managed to survive. Basically, it's eyeball, teeth, and arms. So what would I buy? Some people might not know this. Bangles, loves the bangles. When you have 5 arms, you're going to want more bangles, you're going to want rings, you're going to want all sorts of things. So I think that's where we're going to be looking at. Of course, we don't want to get Kindlefinger something that's just going to be pinched by his brother Apatrax, the Starefish. Maybe that's where we're going. I'm thinking some kind of charm bracelet. Get some little Zinchen charms in there, something that Apatrax can't steal. I think Kindlefinger would really appreciate that. Happy birthday, Kindlefinger. Let's go. Antonio Gonzalez 8836 asks, what do you think about Maggotkin as a warband and the Wurmspat? Are they worth pursuing for Warcry as a Bladeborn warband? Right, so the Wurmspat, if I remember, recently got points decreases in the September update. You've got Fecular Flybone, Goldbroch the Butcher, and Septimus the Plague Swarm. Now it looks like Goldbroch and Septimus are actually pretty decently pointed. Goldbroch the Butcher, 100 points for, 26 wounds, 4424. It is a beast, but it's kind of what it is. Septimus, again, 26 wounds compared to your Putrid Blight King's 25. He's exactly the same as just basic Blight King with Blighted Weapon. He does have range 2, though, and crit 5. So I wouldn't necessarily go for Septimus, I think your basic Blight Kings are better. But Goldbroch the Butcher, there's definitely something there. Fecular Flybone is just a wizard. She has a double once per battle to allow her to shoot another time. I think for 170 points, she's kind of okay. She's not amazing, but I'd really want to be taking a Lord of Plagues, just because Lord of Plagues is better. The standout fighters for me are the Lord of Afflictions, the Lord of Plagues, Puskal Blight Lords, and your basic dudes. One interesting thing here, the Lord of Afflictions, 320 points, got a 4535 damage profile. If you take a Puskal Blight Lord at 260 points and give it +1 base damage, you get the same damage profile at something like a 30-point discount, and all you're really missing is like 4 wounds. So always take the Puskal Blight Lord over the Lord of Afflictions if you're doing it internally. That'll really go well for you, because that damage profile on like with a 38 wound body with movement 6 and flight is actually pretty good. I really like Lord of Plagues. It smashes, right? 3 attacks, strength 5. What don't you want? They are a bit weak when we are talking about abilities. They did get the Harbinger of Decay with Doom Bell, which I actually quite like. It's got a really funky quad with a massive range of 7 inches, so no reactions or abilities. So I think if I were going to build this warband myself, I'd probably take Goldbroch the Butcher, because I think for 100 points, real good. Then I would take the Puskal Blight Lord, the boosted one with the +1 base damage. You can give him +1 toughness, also just turn him into a brick, or you could give him +1 attack to make him a 5/5/25. It's good. It'll work. It's pretty decent. Then you need to take some actual hero. Personally, I would go that Lord of Plagues just because he's got the damage. And I think in a warband like Nurgle Rotbringers, that's kind of what you need. You need to run in there with as much damage as possible and use your wounds to weather out whatever storm comes your way. If you give the Lord of Plagues +1 attack, 4/5/35, that's really good. You probably want to bring 1 Bell, just because that +1 move with a really big range is actually pretty good. And then we'll take a couple of normal Blight Kings. And that puts you to 980 points with 7 fighters. You only have 20 points. You can't afford all of the upgrades. So what you could always do is drop a Lord of Plagues, take a Putrid Blight King Blight Lord, then you're on 955, then you got the points for the blessings, but you're not hitting as hard. Or what you could do is drop the Bell. The Bell will save you 10 points. That brings you down to 970, which gives you the points you need to upgrade your Blight Lord, because that's really the guy that you need. You can either go 7 fighters or you can go 6 fighters. I think there's a decent little warband at 7 guys. I think it's okay. That's the way I would play it. I wouldn't necessarily go for a lot of the Wurmspat. Like I said, Goldrush the Butcher, he's pretty good. If you really need to save points, you can put Septimus in there. I wouldn't necessarily go with Fecula. There are other better fighters in the list that you can take. Delabus asks, how strong would Grombrindle the White Dwarf be if he was allowed in match play? Now, I'm going to give you a little secret. I have never looked at the stats for Grombrindle because he is not match play legal and I only play match play games. So I don't know. Let's take a look. Right, the White Dwarf, what has he got? 4535 damage profile in combat. That's really good. 210 points for that damage profile is very, very good. Then he's got a range, one shot, strength 546. That's fine. 25 wounds after survive is pretty good. He's got a bunch of abilities. He got a double range actions, crit on 3s, which is fine. Most of the time you're not going to be using it. He's only got 1 attack on range. He's got a triple, +1 move, +1 attack, 2 additional fighters on a friendly fighter, another friendly fighter within 3 inches. Reclusians have a similar kind of ability, and we might be talking about things like the Brugget and whatever, but those other fighters generally can't fight as well as Grombrindle does. The question is, what are you going to use it with? And if Grombrindle was match play legal, you could combo him in with any of those really fast and really snatchy fighters to make them even faster and smashier. So that's a very good ability. His quad, until the end of the round, enemy fighters within 6 can't use reactions. And abilities have no effect on enemy or friendly fighters. So it basically turns off abilities of the targets within 6 and no reactions. On paper, that's a good ability. Do I think it's something you'd use over Rampage, especially on Grombrindle? Absolutely not. So I think as a potential match play thing, what are we going to compare it to? I think the closest thing we're really going to compare it to is probably like an Annihilator Prime with Grandhammer. That thing's a 4635, this is a 4535, so they are comparable. Grombrindle's 10 points more, they have the same kind of wounds. The Prime has toughness 6, it'll have the same movement. Compared to the Annihilator Prime, it looks pretty fair, to be honest. Yeah, I think it might be okay, actually, because the question is, are you going to bring Grombrindle over a Prime? The Prime just does more damage. Grombrindle's abilities are fine. They're not amazing. But the Prime gets all of the additional boosts that Stormcast Eternals get. I think Grombrindle's fine. He should be okay. MJO asks, how long is it reasonable for fans to wait for new units to be added to the Warcry roster? For example, I'd like to build a Slaves to Darkness Warband, but Darkoath aren't out yet. Okay, this is kind of timestamping when this question came in. What's your opinion on how long is it reasonable to wait for Games Workshop? Well, okay, so this question was asked before Darkoath were coming out. Now they're out, so you can play them, so that's fine. We know that Games Workshop, so far, what they've done, they've been doing updates every 6 months. And every 6 months, they seem to be putting a whole bunch of additional stuff into the game. I'm hoping that the next update will have things like Skaven. That would be really nice. Slaves to Darkness, the Age of Sigmar Battle Tome didn't really add all that much. We got all the Darkoath stuff anyway, so that's okay to me. So I think for me, it would really depend when the fighter is released and when those models are released and how far away we are from a potential FAQ coming out. If it's released right at the very end, say like 1 month before the FAQ is due to come out, I wouldn't expect them to come out that month. But if you have several months worth of headway, I think that's when I would expect them to come. So anywhere up to 6 months is what my answer would be, simply because that's the time it takes for Games Workshop to put out FAQs for this game. Unstable Vampycat asks, opinions on Age of Sigmar faction warbands, any in specific that are underrated or deserve more love from Games Workshop? I noticed some of them have very few actual usable models in Warcry, such as the various demon factions. So we're asking about Age of Sigmar, we're asking about Compendium in this case, which ones need more love, which ones need more attention, and are there that really should be used more? So I think for warbands that need more attention, we are definitely looking at Identity Deepkin, we are looking at Khorne Demons. I would like to see Nurgle Mortals, so we've been talking about Rotbringers already. I'd like to see them given a little bit of a boost. And then, of course, we've got the usual anything with an elf-based stat line. So whilst Daughters of Cain, they are actually pretty good. I say pretty good. they're fine. They do what they need to do. Those warbands with core elf stat lines that I don't want to say they don't work. It's just in the kind of format that we are playing now, they are not some of the best and not some of the easiest fighters to use. Anything with an elf stat line, but if you're going to focus on anything Games Workshop, give me Deepkin, fix them because they have amazing models. Give me the turtle. If you want to give me the turtle, give me eels. I'll take eels. Second part of the question, any I think are underrated. I think, I've been saying this for a while. Gloomspite Gits have all of the tools internally to be able to put together a really good, solid warband, right? They have all of the abilities under the sun. They are a proper toolbox warband to play. The problem is that they haven't been cracked yet, I think. And a lot of people who play Gloomspite Gits really kind of make like, oh, here's all of my square coppers. So I think what we need are like serious Gloomspite Gits players who really want to try and push that warband. And I think that they are one of the warbands that are severely underrated this edition. Similarly, Flesh Eater Courts, to me on paper anyway, they have all the tools they need. I think they want to use the Skinnakin as their basic chaff. I don't think their basic ghouls can do it. But with Skinnakin, with a whole bunch of the Flesh Eater Court stuff, they have a bunch of utility characters. I think they can do it also. So any one of those two warbands, I would like to see a player pick them up and put the time and put the reps in to try and really do well with those. All right, that's it from me for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope some of these questions were interesting for you now that they've been answered. If you want to see more questions from me and if you want your questions answered, put them down in the comment section below and you'll probably see them in a future edition of Off Meta Talk. As always, if you want more stuff like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That's the end of the video. So as always, I've been Itan, this has been Off Meta Musings, and we will see you next time.